It's official. UCLA. Big news Monday. Pac-12 champs in the regular season outright for hoops. And they finally make it official. Welcome aboard, D'Anton Lynn. Let's talk about it on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, it's your favorite host. It's Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for tuning in to the Locked On UCLA podcast. Thanks for making your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get it, and it's available on YouTube. So like, comment, and subscribe if you want to follow the show. Twitter at Locked On Bruins. Thanks for tuning in because it's a big one today for Locked On UCLA. It was going to be majority hoops. Football drops a bomb on us in terms of big news officially. So let's get right to it. UCLA Hoops, which is where we'll start, comes out and has a fantastic week. We already talked about how they went through and beat Utah, had to wait the extra day to go play in Boulder on a Sunday afternoon. And if I wasn't so drowned out by the sniffles and the coughs, I would have reacted to it yesterday. But here we are talking UCLA's victory against Colorado. One, it was helped out by the Sun Devils, so shout out to ASU. Desmond Cambridge for the half-court plus buzzer beater to beat Arizona at their place at the McKale Center for UCLA to one, at least get the share of it, and then by beating Colorado, UCLA got the outright Pac-12 championship. It was hard. It certainly wasn't easy yet again as UCLA wins 60-56. But in a week full of interesting games because you beat Utah on the road, Wazoo turns into a quad one win because of their building and building up the net and all the rankings. The win for UCLA at Wazoo becoming a quad one win. You also had the fact that both Kentucky and Maryland jump into the top 25. UCLA still slotting at number 4. Purdue drops again. Everything is lining up for UCLA to be in a top 4 seed, get a number 1 seed, and potentially stick out west with Arizona, continue to slip a little bit. Purdue, it's not like UCLA can surpass a Houston, an Alabama, or Kansas at this moment, the defending champs. But here UCLA is number 32 in terms of conference titles here out west, not including tournament titles. First one in a decade. You take out the Steve Alford era, you go back to Ben Howland, and Mick Cronin has brought a resurgence, a relevancy to UCLA basketball that hasn't been seen in a decade since Ben Howland was at the helm, and if not even a little bit more, when they were more Final Four bound 3 years in a row from 06 to 07, 08, the mini glory years, because you can't be a glory team in the UCLA fandom if you don't come away with the title. But again, the Bruins have come out and done what they needed to do. Go win at the mountain schools and set themselves up for, with 2 wins this week against ASU, which could potentially knock them out of the tournament, with a win at home against Arizona on a sold-out crowd in the regular season finale on prime time. It's a travesty that the 300-pound gorilla, the evil four-letter, they did not choose to send College Game Day to UCLA to celebrate the Bruins and Wildcats, but whatever it is, it's comical yet again. But the Bruins, with all these wins in the regular season, are lining themselves up for a much easier ride in the NCAA tournament and much less travel, starting with a Pac-12 tournament. Let's take a look at who stood out in this low-scoring, semi-ugly basketball game for the Bruins, because they improved to 25-4, 16-2 in Pac-12 play, watching Colorado, who mind you has a couple of ranked wins, went 15-15 with this loss, 7-12 overall. The difference in this game between the first meeting between these two teams for the Bruins and the Buffaloes was simply the fact that it was equally as ugly, equally as needing to grind it out. The difference was Colorado didn't turn it over 23 times. If Colorado didn't turn it over 20-plus times like they did in Pauley Pavilion, that game might have looked completely different, and Colorado might have gotten that win in January. At home, in front of a more packed-out crowd than maybe Utah brought to the table, the Buffaloes were there to play, And if you're watching it on CBS like I was and waiting for that Michigan-Wisconsin game to end, only for them to hit a ridiculous buzzer beater to send that game into overtime, but luckily on the West Coast, they cut over to UCLA Colorado. It was funny enough to say, hey, wait a minute, I think I missed the first UCLA basket. And then they didn't score for almost 4 minutes. So I almost joked to myself, will I actually see a UCLA basket in this game? Well, Colorado jumped down to 11-2 lead. They were up by 10 at one point in this game. The Bruins could not buy a triple to save their basketball lives in this game. They were 1 of 14. They weren't exceptional from the free throw line. Missing 7 were the Bruins. Wasn't a best effort. Hawkes had to grind out 10 first half points, but somehow, some way in a game where Colorado out-hustled them early on, out-muscled them, simply had more energy and juice in their legs compared to the bit of the elevation, everything that goes into play with the much longer road trip from a late Thursday night to the extra day staying on a Sunday, which isn't normally the case for these West Coast schools. UCLA came out extremely flat in the first 10 minutes of the first half, if not even longer. Somehow, some way, which is the reason why UCLA will be a tough out in the tournament. They're only down 2 at the half. They're only down 30-28 in a game that they could have been down by 8, 10, 11, 7, double digits, at least 2 possessions. But Hawkes paced the Bruins as he continues to build his case for Pac-12 Player of the Year. And while we're not going to touch on that in this episode, the Bruins came away only being down 2 and going on an 11-0 run to begin the second half. UCLA put themselves in position to win, but Colorado would not go away because Tristan da Silva, 13 points, hit a 3, although he got hurt in the final 5 minutes, rolled that ankle unfortunately, and might have had an impact in those final 5 minutes with the game being within a point and still in the balance. He went out but was impactful with 13 points, 9 rebounds for the Buffaloes. You had Luke O'Brien, who could not miss from 3, it seemed like. 13 points, 10 rebounds, a double-double for him. And KJ Simpson didn't shoot the ball well, but 14 points, a rebound, a couple of assists. And the Bruins were on the ropes, certainly on the ropes in Colorado. Some might have been confident down the stretch. Some were already getting the March Madness sweats, as some I've seen on social media. I wasn't exactly fully confident. I wasn't exactly in the sweats. I was just frustrated with how it was going. But again, it was Hawkes that kept the team close in the first half. And while Hawkes did roll that ankle, you hope it was okay. He did make some good moves with the footwork and the paint down the stretch. It was the Tiger Campbell big bucket show late because he had 3 steals, had big shots down the stretch, keep putting the Bruins ahead. And lo and behold, it was Campbell who came through with the only made 3 in 14 attempts for UCLA, considering they shot a little bit better than Colorado. And quite frankly, the Bruins were extremely lucky that Colorado is one of the worst teams in the Pac-12, the worst team in the Pac-12 when it comes to shooting free throws, because the Buffaloes missed 10 of their 23 foul shot attempts. So for the Bruins, got lucky, but sometimes on the road, you just have to grind it out. You have to make your own luck. In March, you're going to have to make your own luck. In many of these recent tournament runs, the most recent 4 Final Four runs, UCLA has had some epic games. You can go to Heartbreak City. You can go from the first 4 game in Mick Cronin's first run in the NCAA tournament with the Bruins all the way to those close wins, a couple of easy ones in the middle there. You're going to need a break in the tournament. And UCLA continues to be that team that they can pass the eye test. They're efficient defensively, but you have to create your own breaks. And the Bruins always seem to force the issue, force the opposition to mistakes, or be so clamps, have so many defensive stoppers from Jalen Clark, who hasn't been efficient offensively in seems like a while, especially on the road, but he's so elite defensively. You add Bona's athleticism when he can stick on the floor. Hawkes, who's upped it up the intensity defensively. It was Campbell who got 3 steals, leading the Bruins, paving the way defensively in this game. In the game that didn't look pretty in March, that will not look pretty for any eventual national champion. You will have to make your breaks. You will have to get these ugly wins. And UCLA has almost built this inner bulldog mentality that they seem ready and fit for the Pac-12 tournament to come in a couple weeks. You've got the Arizona schools, which can bolster the resume, and the big daddy of them all, and not the granddaddy, because, that's in Pasadena, but the big one, the NCAA tournament, that is what UCLA will be prepared for. And it seems like with all these games, a couple of more down the stretch, UCLA will be prepared for the NCAA tournament. So it was nice to see, despite a lack of a singleton point in this game, Mari Bailey get back to 11 points. UCLA was able to grind this out. It wasn't pretty. They made big buckets down the stretch, and we'll see how they do against these Arizona schools at home. Pack it out both times, Bruins fans, because they are important games. So we'll talk UCLA football because the coaching staff has been not exactly flipped upside down. Some moves we knew were coming, some rumored to come. Let's talk about it after I tell you about Built Bar. Because, hey, if you're sitting at home and we're going to be watching all these March Madness games, or if you're watching this show, Locked On UCLA, Built Bar is a delicious treat without the fat and the calories because they're 100% real chocolate. They've got 17 grams of protein, flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. And while those are unique, different flavors, I certainly love myself a churro, peanut butter brownie. If you love more of a coconut almond flavor, they've got that for you, amongst even more flavors with Built Bar because it's healthy that is actually tasty. So go to Built.com, get yourself a 13-bar box, or go to your local Walmart Sam's Club, get yourself a 4-bar box, and get Built today. You're not going to want to miss out. Rumbling on with Locked On UCLA, segment 2, had to get to it. I would have done 2 segments on basketball today, but I was flip-flopping between football, football, and we ended up with football in the second segment slot because D'Anton Lynn is officially the UCLA defensive coordinator. And I touched on this last week when the rumors were almost set in stone that he was the unofficial man for the job to become the new defensive coordinator taking over for Bill McGovern. And let's talk about these UCLA football hires. First, D'Anton Lynn. We touched on it, a young defensive coordinator, Penn State player. He was in the NFL for quite a few years now. He's the son of the former Chargers coach Anthony Lee. So now D'Anton comes over, taking over a defense which has some pieces both from the portal, some hidden gems from last year, some homegrown talent of their own under the former regimes. Third defensive coordinator in 3 seasons as McGovern last year as an arrow. Compared to many Bruins fans, his defensive days could not end soon enough. But here is some new blood with D'Anton Lynn. The youth, and I think an underrated aspect that I don't think I touched about when I talked about Lynn the first time, not only the youth, but the fact that he played at Penn State. In terms of recruiting, he can connect to these California kids, which, mind you, a lot of these California guys, they're not staying in California as much anymore, at least before USC got Lincoln Riley, before maybe UCLA has reestablished themselves on the map. But with both the Bruins and the Trojans moving to the Big Ten, you might need a Big Ten guy to prepare not only the current Bruins, who will be moving to the Big Ten in over a year, but also to recruit the guys in California saying, hey, I played there. This is what it's like. To go tell the Big Ten kids, hey, come play 6 to 7 games potentially on the West Coast, and we'll still go visit on the road games back to where you're from. So that is an underrated aspect beyond just the X's and O's for D'Anton Lynn, which we'll have to see how it turns out. But let's talk about the rest of the defensive staff getting scrambled a little bit in terms of position switches. One, the most important in terms of who is now not officially on the coaching staff, it is Bill McGovern, no longer defensive coordinator. He is the director of football administration. So he goes into more of an administrative role as opposed to an on-field coaching type of role. And the Bruins made that switch. So you wonder, does he get the full $1 million or the full contract? Do they change it? But you hope McGovern's okay because of the rumors. And the only thing we've heard about it is illness officially in the public sphere. Other changes, Deshaun Foster, not on the defensive side, but associate head coach in addition to running backs coach. Considering what the Bruins have done with the running game these last few years under Chip Kelly, a well-deserved honor for a Hall of Fame Bruin. Then you have Ikaika Malloy, who goes from outside linebackers, edge rushing coach, now will coach the entire D-line in addition to the outside linebackers. So Ikaika, who's now been with the Bruins a little under a year and a half now, coming to the staff in December of 2021 before the eventual canned Holiday Bowl of of 2 yesteryears. He comes through, and remember, it was the edge that was giving the Bruins some pass rush this most recent season. So you wonder, with the previous defensive lines coach leaving, giving Malloy the full control, the full reins, you wonder how that will change the pass rush or just give UCLA a little more consistency in terms of the interior pass rush and stopping the run game on the interior, and then how that will help the rest of the defense. We've already known about Cody Whitfield, who is the quarterback's coach. He can add already being in the UCLA staff, going to Sac State for a year, which is one of the top teams in the FCS last year. And then Brian Norwood, who has been shifted from one to the safeties. He is now an assistant head coach and the passing game coordinator. So for those three, gets technically 3 titles from safeties, assistant head coach, and he is the official passing game coordinator on his name. That's what the UCLA release said. Adding to all those names, those are the new positions or official titles for those coaches, with McGovern going to administration, D'Anton Lynn taking over the defensive coordinator duties, a shift from Chip Kelly's buddy system in terms of, I remember you, and have coached with him forever, or previous defensive coordinator experience. But Lynn has none, but could breathe a new air into the UCLA defense, which, if it's ever spectacular, can make the Bruins a title contender in the future if Chip Kelly has a great offense one year with all the recruits he brings in the portal. And if the Bruins can have a good/great defense, UCLA, watch out. Rest of the country, watch out. I'm not saying that's what's happening now, but if it all pans out, the Bruins may have made themselves into something to look out for, a force to be reckoned with, maybe in this last year of the Pac-12, but in the Big Ten. So don't get me wrong. Don't catch my words out in front of me here. If it works, beautiful. For Lynn, let's see how what Chip Kelly, moving away from what he's normally done, older guys, generally, even to his NFL days with former defensive coordinators at multiple stops, how does Lynn fit the mold in a college game after many years of NFL experience for the pretty young head coach, one of the younger defensive coordinators in his early 30s. So we'll see how it all plays out and how the new position switches plays out for the defense this year. We'll know until we get to spring practice, fall camp, and then eventually the games in 2023. So that's all for UCLA football news. I hope you loved it. It's official. D'Anton Lynn is the defensive coordinator, and Bill McGovern is in the administrative role. Now we'll rumble on into the third segment. And I wanted to react to this the day out, but as I've already touched on, your boy has the sore throat in terms of talking so much during play-by-play broadcasts, doing podcasts all the time. We get a little gassed. But we still were able to watch a little bit of UCLA baseball, kept in touch with softball, and watched the UCLA basketball game all in one day. Baseball, we're going to push that to the side for the next day in terms of talking about their Vandy series. But softball, the highs and the lows from one day to the next. The Bruins, who were number 1 in the country after Oklahoma fell in a non-conference game to Baylor about a week ago. The Bruins, number 1, 17-0, 6 ranked wins accumulated over 2 weekends heading into the game against Oklahoma. And surprisingly, despite the extreme rainfall, the snow throughout Southern California, throughout some of California that doesn't even get snow in certain parts, the Bruins are able to play all their games, and unfortunately the last one was the most disappointing because throughout this Mary Nutter Collegiate Classic, they blew out the number 3 team in the country. Faraimo no-hit Florida. We already touched on that. 10-0 in a run rule, just absolutely smacked the Gators around. Just fended off the Kentucky Wildcats in a close one. Back-to-back 2-1 wins over Iowa and Northwestern. Very close games. And then beat Texas A&M 3-0 with a shutout. And then it was just the no-show on a Sunday morning. Again, remember, 9:30 in the morning after already, for the Bruins, having played 5 games from a Thursday night, late Friday night, Saturday afternoon, and early evening, and then playing 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. You're not really going to have to do that in any type of championship softball, barring ridiculous rain during the Women's College World Series. But 9:30 a.m., a tough ask, and for Oklahoma, that's more closer to noon, their body time. The Sooners, after a scoreless first inning, you don't want to say it. I think Coach Inouye Perez said it best when talking to LA Times with the post-game quote, well, that sucked. That sucked. Legitimately sucked. It was the legitimately I added there. Bruins got run ruled 14-0 in a game that would have been recasted, replayed, tape delayed on MLB Network, hoping for a classic. It was, again, the Bruins getting smacked around in their second straight matchup against the Sooners, dating back to the season's end in 2022 to the first of many big meetings against the Sooners this season. 14-0. They pounded out 20 hits to UCLA's 3, and the Bruins just could not touch the Sooner pitching. One, it was Alex Storako who just shut down the Bruins, 5 shutout innings, 3 hits. UCLA couldn't do anything. But the more shocking part was Faraimo, who has been often used, was closing out games, threw the no-no against the number 3 Gators at the time. In an inning and 2/3, 4 runs, 7 hits, 3 home runs given up, and got touched up. Lauren Shaw gave up 4. Taylor Tinsley gave up 5 earned, 6 runs, 8 hits. And notice how, Inouye Perez, she started Faraimo for a reason. She wanted her to get that experience, try to maybe get that bad taste out of her mouth when it came to last year in May when she got crushed in the circle then, getting some momentum, the new year, the offseason. But you get that experience now. One, when your ace, defending conference pitcher of the year, gets rocked. And every pitcher nowadays can have their bad day, and for Imo it was. They're going to have your bad day, considering I believe almost all her hits were given up via 2 strikes, 2 outs, and it was just the inability to put away the Sooner hitters when it comes to close pitches off the edge of the zone. That close between getting out of an inning before just getting crushed with 2 outs. And that's the difference between playing the good teams and the great teams and the 2-time back-to-back national champions. And no, this is not the Josh Linalo Sooners of last year or even 2 years ago, but still they've turned themselves into a perennial program that is almost impossible to beat unless they have an off day, and needing to beat them twice can be tough. And you think the Bruins will learn from this moving forward. They have their opportunity, and it's better to get punched in the mouth early, make your adjustments, and play angry, as opposed to being this team who goes undefeated for the whole season, and or the majority of the season. There's too many close games for the Bruins these last 2 weekends to make me think they would break any sort of unbeaten streak throughout the rest of the season. Yet, it was nice to see UCLA. Remember, 17-1, 6 ranked wins. They shellacked the number 3 team in the country. But it's funny how one game, 1 2-hour sequence on a Sunday morning in the Mary Nutter can change the taste and the mindset for the rest of the non-conference season. And it probably won't be that bad taste out of your mouth until heading into the postseason, when I believe in their minds they want to play Oklahoma for the title or shut them down in Oklahoma City in the Women's College World Series and knock them off their dynasty spread. In the meantime, UCLA, the only hits were from Maya Brady, Kennedy Powell, who went 2 for 2, the Bruin, who couldn't seem to get out in that game. So despite many opportunities between the freshmen, you have Jordan Woolery, you have Megan Grant, who have been swinging the bat really well. Brady has been one of the best players in the country. It was just not one of those days. So remember, it's only February. The season goes all the way to May, and the Bruins can get their revenge then. And hey, you'd rather give them one now as opposed to give them one in May when, it does count. It all counts. But the Bruins probably won't be number 1, barring Oklahoma slipping, which probably doesn't seem foreseeable. But who knows? They maybe came to play. We'll see how this plays out for the rest of the season. So the Bruins, as it looks like a lot of college softball teams this year, beatable, but UCLA is really good. And Inouye Perez is a title contender, a team that can go deep in the tournament. But there are no super teams, it looks like, this year. There are really good teams, and the Bruins are amongst the short list to win the championship. They'll just have to let this one sting for a little bit before rebounding and trying to get it out of their mouths in terms of a bad loss. They get to play the Judy Garmin against UCF, Fresno State, Cal Poly, Michigan, Cal State Fullerton, a much easier slate of games as compared to what they face. And then in 2 weeks' time, Pac-12 play. That's how quick it turns. And then the Pac-12 softball tournament for the first time in the conference's history, ironically, as UCLA is about to bounce to the Big Ten. So here we are, moving forward. Friamo will learn, Inouye Perez will get the team ready, and they got to be in a situation that they haven't almost been in all year, where their ace got touched up early and they're down big against a really good team. How do they handle that? How do you build moving forward to the rest of the season? Those are questions that will all be answered throughout the rest of, I guess February is practically done, throughout March, April, and then eventually into May. And we'll find out how the Bruins are when it comes to Pac-12 play pretty soon. But, don't want to end it on a downer. 17-1, they're the clear number 2 team in the country. Clear. Just one bad 2-hour stretch, and they'll learn from it. All right? We'll talk about that. Baseball coming up. We're going to talk, coming up, Jaime Jaquez Jr.'s Pac-12 Player of the Year candidacy. I'm going to make my pitch about that coming up in an upcoming episode this week. If there's more football news, we'll be on top of that. UCLA loses to Vandy. We will talk about that as well. And then UCLA's ability for a 1 seed. What's going on for that as they build into Arizona State? And we'll preview the Sun Devil game, the Wildcat game, and then eventually the Pac-12 tournament, because the women are looking for a better seed in a Pac-12 tournament title, all on Locked On UCLA. I'm Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for tuning in. UCLA fans, go check out Locked On College Basketball for your second listen. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.